Okay, so the topic of today's coffee and conversations is understanding your industry. The first part about really figuring out what job you're going to do after college is kind of starting to understand what's out there, what's available, what's happening in the place that you want to do. So step one to a career is to understand what that career might look like and what options exist. It's important throughout your life to stay really up to date on what's going on in whatever chosen industry, whatever specific discipline you're working in order to remain competitive in the job market. So as a student, while you're at the most competitive you're going to be because you're learning everything right now, it's really important to continue to stay up to date and to start now so that it continues throughout your life. Knowing what industries you're interested in early on allows you to understand the decisions that are going to help you get towards your dream career. So for example, if your goal is to get into package design for the makeup industry, you may not necessarily want to do an internship in motion graphics for a news company. They're both design-based, but it's different target markets and different skill sets that are being used. Yes, it's overall still the graphic design work that you're doing, but it's thinking about things in a different way. Thinking 4D is very different than thinking 3D. Oh, and just because I didn't mention throughout this, if you have questions, you can type them into the chat field. We'll also have time at the end for questions. Okay, so what are the types of things that you need to start to look at for your industry? So starting at the extreme basic is what actual industry could you be a part of? So what you're studying is considered a discipline. So industrial design is not an industry. An industry is something closer to home goods, cars, handbags. That's the more specific area where you're going to start to find the jobs that you're in and where you will start to get specificity. Someone who has been designing cars is going to have cars or mechanical things is going to have a much easier time being within the car industry and designing cars post-graduation than someone who has spent their 4 years designing cutlery. Very few majors are going to lead to one distinct industry, so it's always important to start to consider what the industries you might want to focus on are early on. So this isn't necessarily cut and dry for all focuses. Something like animation, that's the industry. Animation is the industry. But for graphic design, even within that, it's not necessarily that you're going to go into the graphic design industry. You might be going into the media industry, the branding industry, the motion industry. It's kind of a more specific area of focus with that you can use the skills that you're gaining within your discipline to be a part of. So the next sort of thing you're going to want to know, and this doesn't actually show my mouth, so we're going to go as it goes. I can highlight if we need to. But companies, what are the companies that are doing awesome work within this industry that you've figured out? Who's winning the awards? Who's showing up everywhere? What are the names that are easy to figure out? What are the names that your parents are going to know, that your friends that aren't necessarily in art school are going to know? What are the names that they probably don't know, but if you were to show them a campaign that the company did or the work that the company did, they might know that. That's kind of where you start to figure out who the big players are. And while that might not be your overall goal to work with them, that's a place to start to understand what's happening within the industry to follow, because they're going to set a lot of the trends that are going to happen. They're usually the ones getting the most money and that have a lot of manpower behind them. The other thing you want to figure out is the industry hub. So for example, New York City is a bit of a hub for the comic book industry, whereas Los Angeles is more of a hub for the animation industry. So where are the companies that are part of this industry located? That's the same idea that New York for fashion, Milan for fashion. How are these places showing up? Where are these communities at? You're going to have a really good, easier time finding the companies and the jobs in those hubs than you might if you were to go to, I don't know, Kansas for example, for graphic design. There's definitely jobs to do that there, but that's not necessarily where the big players are located or the center of that industry. Who are the people to watch? So along with the companies, these go pretty hand in hand. Who are the superstars within the industry? Whether you like the work they do or not, it's more about understanding what they're doing and how their work drives the industry than it is understanding like, oh, I need to copy what they're doing. So for example, you might not like Jeff Koons, but the reality is his studio employs artists and those in roles that are art adjacent. So you could be an art registrar, for example. So it's important to understand that to start to understand the inner workings of the fine arts industry is, okay, a big artist runs a studio. What work do they actually do versus who do they hire? What does that mean as far as my goal and my job as a fine artist? Does that mean I might be doing work for another artist for the beginning of my career? And very likely that answer may be yes. The answer to that you could go is, no, I don't want to do that, but it's good to know that that's one of the pathways through the fine arts world. And then finally, and this is in no way an exhaustive list of things to know, but what we're going to cover today mostly, you want to know what new technology is coming up. Are you learning the newest thing, or are you an iteration behind? A lot of things such as like 3D printing technology advances are still being figured out. How those interact with our world are still a really big question that's happening. So staying up on emerging technology can help you understand how it might change your industry. So the same way that automation came into manufacturing and got rid of certain jobs, it's going to be important to understand how these new technologies might make your job obsolete or are going to change sort of the role of your job. Instead of maybe doing the drawing or whatever, is it going to be about programming a computer to do that specific thing, and how that might affect your career? I think one of the important things to know with the arts is it's really hard to have a computer replace what you're doing, but it can definitely enhance or change things. I know from my own education, it was always really interesting to hear within the graphic design history, how the introduction of computers really changed how people were thinking about their art. They were able to incorporate a lot of things at a much quicker rate than they were when everything was done by hand, for example. Okay, awesome. So how do I actually learn about all of those things? I'm going to go through a lot of resources now, a couple of websites, and we're going to probably move away from the presentation board for a little bit. So professional organizations are really the #1 way to keep a pulse on what's happening within your industry. Organizations are where people come together to discuss the goings-on of the industry, the newest technology, kind of what they see happening. Many have student rates for joining, and if you still can't afford to do that, it's still good to follow this organization to see what's going on. Even if you can't do the yearly membership, it's likely that you can do a free newsletter from them, or that there might be an event or two throughout the year that you would just pay the one-time event cost for. That you can look into. And there's also usually opportunities to maybe volunteer for these events. If you're a member, but you still can afford the membership but not all these events, you might be able to volunteer to maybe get a discount on certain events, or things like that. But that's a really great way to start to talk to the people who are working in the industry, get your face recognized throughout, and really start to hear what they see happening. So how they see the world of UI UX design changing right now, what types of apps they think are becoming the more popular ones, if they think we're going to still be using apps in the next 5 to 10 years. That's going to kind of be a great way to talk to people about those sorts of ideas. The next sort of area would be really looking at your faculty members. Talk to them. They're generally working in your field, and they're probably really interested in about sharing more information and talking to you to help you know more about this world. They're also going to know your work, so they might have suggestions for companies or organizations to look into that might be good for helping support you moving forward. The other side of that is your classmates. You could join or start, if it doesn't exist, a specific organization that is on the campus. There's a lot of clubs that are great, and basically these are people that are spending their free time, if you're specifically doing an organization, that are engaging with the industry, especially things like the Type Directors Club. I think we have a thing of that on campus. Those are people that are choosing to be part of this larger organization of the Type Directors Club and putting their free time into that. That's going to be people that are really looking to get their pulse on the industry. And if you don't want to get as formal as joining a specific club, start a group chat with your classmates where you can share information. This way you can contribute what you're finding, but you'll also get what they're finding and be able to share that amongst one another, whether it's a cool new as I will talk about later, blog, it could be, oh, look at this really cool new design artist showed up, or hey, look at this really terrible design that I saw earlier today. Why is this terrible? Let's talk about that a little bit. Another really important thing is to follow blogs. So look for places that post pretty regularly, post things that interest you. These can be really specific to the area that you're looking to work in, the industry, or they can just be things that inspire you. Even just understanding what's going on in the rest of the world can be really important for getting that track on how things are going to sort of affect one another. If you're really interested in sustainability, but overall you're really planning to work in the makeup packaging industry, follow sustainability blogs. That'll be really great knowledge for you to have applying to jobs, to be able to be like, oh, actually, I heard about this new thing that they discovered about how terrible the tissue boxes are, and what if we replace this type of box and that uses a similar material with something like this? Those are great things to start to know. So you'll still see your industry emerge in some way. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of some blogs. There we go. Let me just find, there we go, my Google. So these are going to be pretty general ones that kind of go for a variety of majors, just because I want to kind of focus for everyone. So there's something like Design Boom. You can see that they have videos, they have competitions, they have a lot of stuff going on. So this is a plant-dyed pasta that someone has a thing for. This is some interior design work that they have. This is some more, this says design, but it feels a little bit more fine artsy. So you'll start to see these are things that are going on. You'll start to see some names popping up. Who designed these things? So this side table, who's the person? Young Hoon Lee, who's the person that did that? This will also allow you to start that list of names, and then from there, I have some stuff that you can do. So the next one we're going to just take a quick look at is Core 77. So this is going to be sort of a similar idea that you can see. So they have a design directory here that has different design firms as well as there. They're putting some, they have some people that are making specific postings that are here. There's different projects that are happening from readers, different furniture things. You can start to see how these interesting, cool stuff that actually exists in the world start to appear. So Wired, this is one that definitely goes beyond specifically the design industry. This is something that's about culture. It's about what's going on right now in science. This is a great way to start to understand just what's going on right now in the world. And then the final one of these I have is Art Forum. So this is definitely a little bit more fine arts focused, but sort of that same idea. What are some galleries? Maybe you'll start to understand who some dealers are, what's happening around the world, what are some galleries, what are some events that you can go to. It's just to start to keep up to date. And no, you won't be able to see every single thing all the time, but it's a great way to just keep that pulse on the industry of what's really going on. And this is really a small portion of what those things might be. So other than blogs, award sites are a really great way, or just the awards in general, to see what's happening, who's winning those awards. If you follow an organization, sometimes like a specific, an organization, sometimes they'll have blogs and might show some highlights on their blog about who's winning things. You can talk to your professors. They might be able to tell you some of the big awards that the place they've worked for has won, or that they've been a part of, that they've gotten over the years. Look for things that top companies boast about. So if you're on a specific firm or company that you're seeing and they have a list of, oh, we won this award this year, look at that award, see who else has won that award, and that'll start to give you that list of, okay, this is what's going on. And then you might also get to see from year to year who's winning, what are they winning for, to start to see maybe the evolution within the industry and where things are going. So I'm just going to go for right now as an example, just the Cannes Lions. That's definitely a big one about creativity. So something here, you can be like, okay, well, who's winning for health and wellness, that's going to be really cool to know versus who's maybe winning for innovation, who's winning for digital craft. Is the same company winning for all of these different types of things? That'll, one, start to get you that list of companies that you might want to look at, but it also allows you to start to once more look at the work that's actually being produced, what's getting recognized right now in the industry, what got recognized a couple years ago that is now being looked over because that's a trend that's gone down at this point. Kind of doing this continual research. So then kind of the final place to look for these types of things is going to be through books and magazines. So go to Barnes & Noble, sit in our arts section, see what's new, what's recently come out. Look in the magazine section, what are the industry magazines, what's happening in there. Subscribe to them, maybe carry a bunch with you and look at them every week. Make it your goal that every week you're going to look at least one new print thing in order to understand what's going on. If you don't want to pay for getting things like books and magazines, check out the library. I believe that they have pretty running subscriptions to certain magazines, so you can go there to keep up to date, or find the section that they have that follows the discipline that you're interested in or the industry that you're interested in. Whose books do they have? Do those people have firms or studios? Do they run blogs? What are those people doing? If they're big enough that they've written a blog that's ended up in a book that's ended up in Pratt's library, that's a pretty good sign that there's someone who is at least a mover and shaker within the industry. Figure out who that person is. What are they doing? Who else have they worked with, perhaps? And then you'll start to really get a bigger sense of this industry and what that looks like. And then finally, Google. Google is great for trying to find these types of things. So I gave you sort of an example of a couple of resources. Well, if you want to find more blogs, what would you go to do that? That's super easy. And we're going to also just do a quick pop back over for that. So if you want to find blogs, there's a couple different things you can search. I'm going to look for, let's try interior design. So interior design blog. So if you just put that in, you're going to find 12 blogs that interior design fans should follow. Okay, top 100 interior design blogs. You're going to find lists with tons of blogs. And whether or not it's the best list ever, that's kind of for you to start to look through, decide, are you liking the work that they're posting? Is it interesting? This is my domain. I don't know what this website is. Maybe I'll go look at some of the blogs they're recommending, see which ones I actually like, and follow those if I want. You can also go through something that's, okay, maybe a little bit more substantial to begin with, and so Elle is a very specific brand. Okay, this is blogs that they're specifically talking about liking. Go through there, see what happens. It's a great place to start, and it's about finding the correct words to do things. And as it showed, it can be as easy as just putting in, I want interior design blogs. You could look for best interior design blogs, see what shows up. And this kind of really works for a lot of the different industries and areas you're looking for. Will what you find be perfect? As I said, no, but it's up to you to do research from there. Is the company they list as the best actually good? So if you're looking instead for interior design firms, and you find top 10 commercial interior design firms, is this actually the best firm? I mean, best is always based off a lot of different criteria, but when you're given something presented to you as, oh, this is the top one, go to that company's site and see what is showing up on there. What type of work are they doing? Do they like the work? Do they have a press section up there? You can even go as much to look at glassdoor.com and put the company in, and you can find what people feel about that. There's company reviews here, so you can learn a little bit more about that specific thing. Just because the world says something is amazing doesn't necessarily mean it is, so always do your due diligence of doing the research after it's ended up on your list of possible places you might want to work or places to watch. So then kind of the final piece of all of this is actually tracking what you're seeing, making sure that you're synthesizing that information. So do what works for you. Keep a journal maybe where you're writing things down. Keep a Pinterest board where you pin things that you really like. Keep lists of people that are showing up. You really want to make sure you're going to keep, especially companies you're interested in, a running list of those going, but also just what you see happening so that when you're having conversations at an organizational event or in your interviews, you can talk a little bit more broadly about the industry around you. It's really awesome that you did this really cool project, but how do you see this project fitting into what you see happening in the greater industry at hand? Along with keeping track of things, follow up on what you write down. So if you write down a company, do some follow-up work. Where is their headquarters located? Are they global? If you see a lot of companies, then you might start to see that trend of a lot of companies being in a particular city or country. That might be a specific hub where you might consider going after graduation. You might consider trying to find an internship in that place during school. Come talk to us about any of those types of interest things, because we want to make sure that you get to be in these places where things are happening. Also, keep track of what you see that you don't like. That might be a sign that if you're finding only things you don't like, that this industry might not be the right one for you, or this might help you find a platform of extra passion. So for example, if you're seeing a lot of issues of women not being a part of the conversation, that might be a driving voice or a driving force behind you really pushing for that change within the industry and something you can be passionate about and engage in a conversation with. Really, more than anything else, understanding your industry is about connecting what you're doing to the larger work around you and understanding that nothing happens within the bubble. As much as Pratt can definitely feel like that sometimes, people outside of Pratt really want to hear how you're connecting to the greater industry, what you see happening next, where you see different things going. And this will really allow you to have that conversation based off a really thorough understanding because you've been doing your research on it. Okay, so thank you for joining me. That's what I have for today. If you have questions, you can speak them if you're only on a phone, or otherwise you can throw them into the chat field and I'm happy to hang around and answer them. I'm gonna stop the recording, but otherwise have a really great day.